First of all, like always, I want to thank everybody for coming out, especially this week. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I know we got a bunch of players out today doing community service over at the Village and at a bunch of the local elementary schools. So great opportunity, great time to spend some time with family and take a moment and appreciate what we're all thankful for and what we're blessed for. So I look forward to having a bunch of guys at my house on Thanksgiving for dinner, as well as we have a team Thanksgiving meal here as well after practice. So thought I would leave with that. Kind of reviewing the Rutgers game real quick. Really, just like we talked about after the game, the critical stats we won. We won the turnover battle, we won the penalty battle, the drive start battle, the sack battle, and then the explosive play battle. We won it. We didn't meet our goals, but we won it in terms of had more explosive plays than them. Players of the week on offense was Pat Fryermuth. Defense, we really didn't want to single one guy out, so we went with the defensive line. The entire defensive line is playing at a really high level right now. And then on special teams, Blake Gillikin. Some kind of general last points about that game. Positives. Defense is doing a great job creating turnovers right now. Really should have had one more in the game. We had the strip sack fumble. Should have had another one there. Defense is doing a really good job of getting off the field right now. At 5 3-and-outs, and they were 67% on third down. And then our offense did a much better job on third down as well. And then I thought protecting our quarterback. We had 0 sacks in the game, and we were able to get 4. So I thought those were kind of big deciding factors in the game. Opportunities for growth. We got to eliminate the critical errors and penalties. So we had an unsportsmanlike penalty. It would have been 4th and 24. We give them a first down. We can't do those things. And then we had another personal foul on a second down run. Would have been 3rd and 11, and we give them a first down. So we got to get those things cleaned up. And then offensively, we got to finish drives. I think we had 2 drives on Saturday that went for 12 plays or more, and we weren't able to finish the way we should finish. So those are the things that really kind of jumped out after watching the game and making some corrections. Going on to Maryland this week. And what Coach Canada has done there, pretty impressive. I know that place obviously very well, been there for 8 years. Coach Canada has done a really nice job. He's very respected as an offensive coordinator. He's obviously doing both responsibilities right now, doing a nice job. They got 15 players back, returning starters in their program. You look at what they're doing offensively. It's Matt's offense and what they're doing. They do a great job all the way back to when we played him when he was offensive coordinator at Pitt. Motions, shifts, unbalanced, tackle over, unbalanced motion with the X off the ball. They really try to create conflict that way. A lot of people are doing that through the RPO type offense. These guys are doing it, causing conflict with their motions and shifts and trades and speed sweeps and fake speed sweeps and inside zone and pin and pull schemes. They do a nice job. They create a lot of conflict. They got an absurd number of explosive runs, and it's going to be challenging. Obviously, Anthony McFarland in the last 2 games has rushed for over 200 yards. Last week, almost 300 yards. We know Anthony really well. He's a DeMatha kid. He's got over 1,000 yards, 8.4 yards per carry. And he can run. I mean, he can flat out run. You watch him on tape, he is fast. Makes a bunch of big plays for him. And then they got a receiver, Sean Jones, freshman receiver, who's doing a nice job for him as well, both in the receiving game and in the running game. Defensively, Andy Bew, as well as Matt Barnes. I think it's kind of a combination of those 2 guys. Matt Barnes, they'll call the defense from what we understand. 6 returning starters, high motor, physical unit that flies around. There's a lot of speed in that area, and it shows up on their roster. Base front, they're gonna play 4 down as well as an Okie. They're going to base out of 1 high, but you'll see also combinations of quarter, half, as well as quarters coverage. and then they pressure a decent amount as well. So I think the thing that jumps out about them defensively is turnovers. They rank 4th in the Big Ten and 14th overall, and I think they got 18 interceptions on the year. So that's going to be the real challenge in the game. Impressed with Jesse Anabanam, the kid out of Silver Spring, kid that we're familiar with as well through the recruiting process, plays defensive end. Been very productive, as well as linebacker number 25. Antoine Brooks, and then Darnell Savage, the safety, who seems like he's been playing there forever. A kid out of Delaware, doing a nice job for him. And then special teams, Matt Barnes had that title. The way they've reconfigured their staff, I would assume they broke special teams up at this point, but he had the title going into the season. Is doing a nice job on special teams as well, especially in the return game. They got explosive guys in the return game, multiple touchdowns. Kickoff returns and things like that, not only from this year but from previous years. Javon Leak, a running back, he's got a long of a 97-yard return for a touchdown. Ty Johnson, long of 98-yard return for a touchdown. And then linebacker Chance Campbell is very productive, as well as wide receiver Tavon Jacobs, who I've known his family for a long time. There's been a bunch of the Jacobs boys. So that's about it. Again, I hope everybody has a wonderful Thanksgiving. The callers that are going to call in, as well as the people that made it into town this week. Last point I'd say is, a great opportunity for our players to get a bunch of rest this week, to catch up academically this week with them not having classes. So our guys are doing community service, they're getting extra sleep, and they're watching more film. So in some ways, this is one of the few weeks that we get where our guys are almost like NFL players. So I'll open up the questions.
Start with Rich Garcella, Running Eagle.
Hi James, how are you?
Good, Rich, how are you?
I'm okay, thanks. Do you remember the first time you saw Trace play in person or on film, and what did you see that prompted you to recruit him?
Yeah, I don't know if it was one thing that necessarily jumped out to us, when we watched him. I think it was, typically when you kind of write down all the factors. When we recruit quarterbacks, we watch the tape, and that's one thing. Trace we were fortunate because we were able to watch him, which isn't typical nowadays. You got to see him play both sides of the ball. You got to see him play on safety, on the defense side of the ball, safety as well. His transcript was impressive. Mom and Dad was impressive. We got a chance to watch him throw in person. We were impressed by that. But then for me, it's a lot of the other things too with that position. It's what was his win-loss percentage in high school, state championships, completion percentage, touchdown to interception ratio. So to me, when you're trying to evaluate the quarterback position, you better look at all of that. And then when you look at all of that, I think you better be careful, because the guys that have a few checks, but those checks are really strong arm, great body, whatever it may be, but they're missing a lot of the other checks. Those guys in my time, they don't really pan out. You want to get a guy who's very well-rounded and has been able to produce at a high level for a long period of time. If not, you're taking on risk. So, for us and Trace, the one thing that he didn't pass was the eyeball test. He's not 6'3", he's not 6'4", but I think we also see now in today's football, there's a lot of guys in the NFL and college that are playing at a high level that don't fit the old cookie cutter presentation that people used to have probably at the quarterback position.
Derek LeVar, School Spare Times leader.
Derek?
How are you?
Good, Derek, how are you?
I'm good. James, what are some of the keys to coaching defenders to diagnose misdirection plays and all those pre-snap shift and motions you mentioned, particularly against the punt like that?
Well, I think in a lot of ways it's like option football. You may be responsible for the A gap, but then you see the motion fly by and the guy fake it, and you start to kind of drift out of your gap. And then all of a sudden, here comes that ball screaming through your A gap, and we're not sound. So it's guys being disciplined enough to say, I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to trust my teammate is going to do his job. So if I'm the force player, I'm the contained player, whatever it may be, A gap, B gap, C gap, whatever it may be, I got to do my job and I got to do it consistently. And what they try to do with all those things is create a little doubt, create a little hesitation, and then that hesitation, usually with that motion and shift, is formulated or planned out to try to create leverage on blocks. So now you hesitate on the backside, and now all of a sudden that guard center combination or that guard tackle combination are able to work up and get a piece of you because the motion or the shift made you hesitate. So now the blockers up front get better angles and leverage, and now they end up having a running back who averages almost 9 yards per carry.
Mark Wogenrich, on-time morning call.
Mark?
Down there.
Hey.
James, do you know how the speculation regarding you and the USC job got started, and how would you like to address it?
Yeah, first of all, I guess it's that time of year where all this stuff happens. It's that time of year. It's the crazy, mad time of year where these types of things happen. So as you guys know, like always, we're focused on Maryland completely, 100%. I don't even think it's fair or right to even be talking about that job, from everything I understand about it. But we're completely focused on Maryland.
Frank Bodani, York Daily Record.
Hey, James, happy Thanksgiving with you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. I appreciate that.
Thanks. About Trey, I know this year, in a lot of ways, it's been harder for him than maybe say last year. The injuries, receivers dropping the ball. What has impressed you the most about how he especially handled the second half of the season, and how do you think he's going to do senior day?
Well, I think the way I kind of look at Trace is I don't know if Trace in some ways we've kind of kindred spirits and souls. I don't know if anything's ever come easy to Trace. He's had to battle and work for everything he's gotten his whole career. So I think he's made for this. I think he's built for this. It's kind of like we talked about on Saturday. After one of those touchdowns, I just said, "Hey, we're just gonna grind through it. We're just gonna work through it." And I think that's kind of how Trace has been. He's earned everything he's gotten in life. No one's given him anything. He hasn't been in a situation. I think different than this in his entire life. So I think he's built for these types of things. That's why I think there's so much confidence and trust in our locker room and our coaches with him, because all he knows how to do is walk in a room with a chip on his shoulder and prove people wrong and overcome adversity. I couldn't be more impressed, but I'm not surprised by it. I'm not shocked by it, whatsoever. He's built for this, and he's a self-made man in a lot of ways.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, James.
Hey, Joe.
I know the goal is always to go 1-0 every week, but this week, is there any emphasis on the fact that going 1-0 could get you into possibly a New Year's Six bowl and keep you alive for a third consecutive 10-win season?
No, not at this point, but I will tell you this, this senior class, you look at what they've been able to accomplish at Penn State. They came to Penn State at a very tough time, we all did, and really battled and worked like crazy to kind of work through it. You look at their record, this senior class, I think all things considered, maybe one of the most impressive senior classes in school history, all things considered. You look at what this senior class has been able to do in the Big Ten era. If you just take the Big Ten era, you look what we've been able to do, what they've been able to do over the last 3 years, this year and previous 2 years in the Big Ten era, pretty impressive. So, we're going to take it 1-0. There's no doubt about it, but I do think there's an awareness and there's an appreciation for what this senior class and what these guys have been able to do over their time here. Some of them are 4-year guys, some of them are 5-year guys. But it's pretty impressive when you take all things into consideration, which I don't know if a lot of people do all the time, and I think they should with these guys.
Mike Gross, Lucas Street Newspapers.
Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
Good.
You were talking earlier about the personal foul penalties, which I don't think it's really been that much of a problem for you, but I wonder, is it harder to coach that now where you want defensive players to be aggressive almost to the point of violence, but there's targeting and there's a lot about the rules that kind of tempers that or hinders that. Is it harder to coach than it used to be?
Well, I think since we've been here, we've been a pretty disciplined team. We had a little stretch there for a couple of weeks where we weren't. But overall, I think last week we had 3 penalties. So we've done a good job of it. We just got to eliminate the ones that are drive changers. That keep people on the field and those types of things. So I think the rules are the rules. So you got to embrace them and you got to coach within the rules. But you can still be as aggressive as you used to be. You just have to lower your target. You just have to lower your target, which is easier said than done. I get that, but we want our guys to be as aggressive as they've ever been. The penalties I'm talking about are the ones that are controllable, stuff after the play that we shouldn't be doing. There's going to be penalties that happen during a game that you're going to live with because they're aggressive penalties. We've talked about the targeting rule. I think we had one, I think it was in Indiana, where, I think I said in the press conference afterwards, I don't know what else I could have told the kid there. I've talked to defensive coaches, I've talked to the officials. If the running back is lowering his shoulder and head and he's, 18 inches off the ground, I don't know how else you get to him. There comes a point where you can't get that low. I mean, try to do it yourself, in the living room or here in the press conference. Try to stand up and try to get that low to the ground. At some point, your head has to go down. I think it's the right rule for football. I get it. But those are ones we're going to live with. The guys that I think are leaving their feet and launching upward and using their helmet as a weapon, that's a different story. And I think everybody wants that from the game. But I'm not one of these guys that, like, when that happens and it gets called, I get it. That's what we need to do to protect the game and to protect these student athletes. You got to live with it. So I get that. But I want our guys to play as aggressive as they ever have. But there's no doubt there's a lot of time taken talking about how to do that, under today's rules.
Donnie Collins, Grand Times Tribune.
Hey, Donnie, how are you?
Doing really well. Seems like a good percentage of the seniors are going to go to the tunnel for the last time Saturday, or guys that haven't played a lot on Saturday. Guys like Arcangelo, Schumann, and a handful of others. What do they do for the program that nobody outside realizes? And what is their level of commitment over a 4-year span of the program say about them?
Yeah, it's hard to put, it into words what these guys have done. And obviously, like the point you just made, especially the guys that have done it for 4 years, 3 years, a 2-year commitment is still a lot. You think about some of these guys and what they've been able to do to allow us to practice the way we want to practice. Some of these guys have actually, earned, significant time in games, and that's been huge for us. Some of the guys are the guys in the locker room that are bringing energy and bringing perspective. I think that's one of the great things about college athletics and specifically football is you get 120 guys in the locker room from all different backgrounds, from all different perspectives, different ideologies, all these things. And you learn. You learn about yourself, you learn about them, you learn about their backgrounds, you learn about their families. I think it's really important for our players that they hear other people that maybe had challenges or adversity, or guys are able to go home with other people for Thanksgiving. We got a bunch of guys taking other guys home for Thanksgiving because they're able to do that, and other guys aren't. So I think it's the greatest melting pot in the world is a college football locker room. So. I think there's tremendous value in that, probably more than ever right now in our society. So those are the things that go on. And you got scholarship players, you got walk-on players, you got urban kids, you got rural kids, you got all these kids that sacrifice in different ways to allow the program to have the success that it's had. So that's kind of what Saturday is for me. The last time these guys will run out, in the greatest stadium in college football, and give me an opportunity to spend 30 seconds with them and pay my respect to them, and then also do that in the locker room, in front of our home team.
Corey Geiger, Elton Amir.
Hi, James. How are you?
Hey, Corey, how are you?
James, Zach Simpson is listed as among those playing his final home game. Can you discuss his development there for you and just the growth that he's made in the American walk-on?
Yeah, we love Zach. I mean, Zach's a great example. Mom and Dad have been awesome. They come to practice. I always see them walking into the games. He's a guy that legitimately has been in the two deep. For a couple of years now. He's a guy who has earned everybody's respect, that the coaches have confidence putting in the game if we need to. He's really done a nice job for us. In a lot of ways, we'd love him to come back. So these are a lot of the conversations. They're somewhat strange conversations you have to have, because some of these guys have eligibility left, so you kind of got to go to them and ask them, hey, are you planning on walking? Are you planning on coming back? We've developed really good relationships with them, so I think they understand if they're not going to come back next year, that they've earned the right to go out and walk and have that experience. So I couldn't be more proud of him, the way he's worked, how much he's contributed on special teams. He's been fantastic. So we love him, love his family. He's been a big contributor for our program.
We'll open to questions here in the room. Raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you.
James, I know you're talking about a lot of the seniors. A guy like Koa Farmer, he's been in an interesting situation where he's ahead of the kid that everybody wants to see. How has he handled that situation? And can you talk about the impact he's had with the program from coming from California early in the process to where he is now?
Yeah, Koa's been unbelievable. His mom, his dad, his sister. His sister is part of our program. She runs track at Hampton. There's an MBA program there, a 5-year MBA program. It's the whole family. They have been fantastic. I know Coach Pry's got a really strong relationship with Koa and the family as well. There's open communication. But yeah, I think obviously, Koa's done a great job in leading Micah since he showed up on campus and teaching Micah. Well, our guys are good like that. There's some programs I've been a part of where the guy's trying to get some of your reps, and I don't want to help them a whole lot, which I also get that, but it's not the right thing for the program. And Koa's handled everything extremely well. I think part of it is because of how Coach Pry's handled it. And I think Micah looks up to all those guys. Micah sees that as well. So I think it's been a real positive situation because Koa's earned the right to play and do what he's been doing. And it's allowed us to kind of slowly work Micah into a new position and kind of figure it out. And I think you guys heard from Coach Pry the other day is he's now starting to play like a linebacker instead of just a great athlete running around on the field. So it's been a really nice complementary kind of pieces right there for each other. So Koa's been fantastic. He's been one of our leaders off the field really from very early on. He's one of our leaders on the field. He's maximized his Penn State experience in terms of he's got a really strong group of friends that he came in with. He's done unbelievably well academically. He's had great support from mom and dad, have made the sacrifice coming from California to support him whenever they could. So that's a great story. You think about all the way back to when we recruited Koa and he got off the plane in Philadelphia and his flight to State College got canceled and there was 9 inches of snow and then get a car and drive up here, and I was like, there's no way in heck we're getting this kid. And then he said, yeah, and it's been really cool all the way back to our time at Vanderbilt. So these guys hold a special place with me, this senior class, because obviously a lot of these guys were either already committed to Penn State when I got the job, or were committed to me at Vanderbilt and came with. So it's an interesting group. So what's weird, next year will be the first year where the entire team is guys that we recruited. This is the last class of kind of a split. Jonathan Thomas was a guy who was committed. We fell in love with Jonathan when we got here. He's been unbelievable. So it's kind of been a neat mix of the old and of the new. And these guys have been kind of the glue that have held this thing together.
Going off the mix of the old and the new, what do you remember about kind of those moments where you had to make those phone calls to guys like Trace and say, hey, I'm not at Vanderbilt anymore, and what do you remember now about how they kind of responded to that?
Well, it's funny because we do the shares now where the guys get up and talk, and I guess I did know it, but I forgot. A lot of those guys were really mad because they were committed, and then we left, and then we came here, and that was at a time where a lot of things were changing here on our campus. So literally, the entire staff, we couldn't be in the Lash building. So like I remember I go over to the Lash building, like the only person there. They wouldn't let the assistants over because they hadn't cleared through HR yet. I mean, it was madness. We couldn't call recruits for a certain period of time until we cleared because we couldn't be calling on behalf of Penn State. So we didn't talk to these guys from the time we left Vanderbilt to the time we actually cleared here for like a week and a half or so. And now they're mad at us, because they're like, they're kind of left out, kind of stuck in between all of that. So I remember sitting in that, I guess it was the Penn Stater. No, yeah, it was the Penn Stater. And we were all kind of stuck in that room for however long it was. And, fortunately, when we were able to get these guys on the phone and kind of explain the situation, most of them were really good. But some of them, it was a battle, and feelings were hurt and things like that. But it's hard to explain to a 17-year-old kid about HR, and clearing the paperwork and those types of things from a compliance standpoint as well as a university standpoint. And to be honest, I don't know if every place does it that way. They just start calling. So it was interesting. There's no doubt about it. But there's a lot of stories that are told from the staff. That was all here during that time. It was a complete scramble. Because I think, what was it, January 18th or something like that?
Yes.
Somewhere around there, 16th, 14th, something like that. And signing day obviously was February. So it was a complete scramble.
Happy Thanksgiving, James.
You too, man.
Thank
you got
you.
a Thanksgiving sweater on.
Yeah, no, I busted that the other day when it got cold.
Very nice.
Yeah. I want to take you back to the Iowa game. And it just seems, if I may, an observation, it seems like there have been more new formations or new plays over the last couple of weeks, maybe 3-4 weeks. Is that a fair thing to say? And then how has that story gone of adding new plays to the offense and Ricky Ronnie, I guess, or the offensive staff in general? Do you feel they've taken more ownership of it and tried to make that grow versus what it was before?
Yeah, I would say it's probably very similar to how it's been for the last 3 years. We're going to have our base things that we always do. And then each week we'll major in something more than the other based on what the defense does and opportunities that presents itself. And then we'll always have a few new wrinkles that aren't a whole lot different for us, but we think will cause a little bit of conflict on the defense. We'll always have a little bit of that in. Now, depending on how the game goes, and you run those things and have success with it, you do more of it, or not. Some plays and some designs are made up for different segments of the field. So this is for the fringe zone. Once we get to that area where we feel like we've got the first chance to score points, and then once you work in the red zone and things like that. So a lot of it deals with timing and kind of the flow of the game as well. But we typically, for the last 3 years, have always had it kind of set up that way, where here's a couple wrinkles that we haven't shown, here's our base offense that we're going to run, and then here's the things that we're going to major in based on what they're going to give us. A lot of times we're breaking down formations. So You know, when you break down the formations, it's interesting. This formation, you know, the efficiency is higher than this formation. So we probably should major in this formation because plays out of this formation seem to give them, you know, more problems. Why? Because of leverage and angles and green grass or whatever it may be. Same thing with personnel groups. So when you're coming up with a game plan, that's kind of how it all comes. And then you try to study people that run a similar offense that you do because they're probably going to try to defend it in a similar way. So it's not a whole lot different than what we've done in the last 3 years. Last 3 years. It probably just seemed like that, but it's not a whole lot different.
James, Trace said back in April that it was weird to look across the ball in spring practice and not see guys like, you know, Jason and Marcus and Grant out there. Is it going to be weird for you? You got 2 more games with them, but is it hard to envision the Penn State's offense without Trace?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, yes, especially on game days. But, you know, there was a transition before Trace, and, you know, I told you guys that we had a lot of confidence in Trace and what the future held for him. And I think, you know, there's still a very similar feeling that way with Tommy and Cliff. You know, those guys have done some really good things, and Levis, you know, is kind of in that direction as well. So, yeah, I think whenever you've had a guy start as many games as he started, it's going to be a transition. It's going to be different. There's no doubt about it. But I do think we've seen enough evidence in games and enough evidence in practice that, you know, I think there's a lot of confidence and excitement for the future as well.
Dave?
James, is there anything about Maryland's offense or about Anthony McFarland that has allowed him to be so prolific in the last couple of weeks to have the back-to-back big games that he's had?
Yeah, I think the things that I kind of already stated with their offense is that they do a really good job with the misdirection in terms of the trading, the shifting, the fly sweeps, the fake fly sweeps, inside zone. They try to give you a little bit of misdirection, try to get you hesitating for a second, so now their offensive linemen, tight ends can get leverage on their blocks, and then all of a sudden he comes screaming out of there and he can run. You know, I think he's a legitimate 4-3 guy. So the combination of what they do, and they got a playmaker carrying the ball, it's problematic. I don't think there's any doubt about it. You know, and now they got, you know, the quarterback starting, who's also a guy that, you know, can make plays with his feet as well. You know, it's challenging, and they've done this. You know, they've done this against a number of opponents. You know, so it's going to be a challenge, and what we got to do is we got to be able to boil it down for our guys that they're confident with their responsibilities and don't get caught up kind of with the you know, the drapes or the paint or the shiny things that try to get your attention, and really focus on what they're actually trying to get accomplished.
Afternoon, Coach.
How you doing?
Good. Could you talk a little bit about Senior Day and what it means to you and the players?
Okay. Yeah, I think, you know, Senior Day is obviously a special moment that we get to recognize these guys. It's their last time playing in Beaver Stadium. You know, obviously, you know, these guys, whether they've been here 4 years or 5 years, been through a lot. You know, came in here at a challenging time in Penn State's history, and, you know, put the program on their back and just went to work. You know, with so many other people, coaches and people in this community, lettermen, and people that work on campus and in the athletic department. So to think about what these guys have been able to accomplish in their time here, and again, I think when you look specifically to the Big Ten era, I think it's pretty impressive what these guys have been able to do. You know, you look at the data, just the raw numbers, and they're impressive, but also how these guys have conducted themselves. You know, I'm really proud of how our guys have done in the classroom, how our guys have been in the community, all of it. You know, academic All-Americans, academic All-Region, guys that, you know, got drafted in the NFL, guys that didn't get drafted in the NFL and free agent, made a practice squad and to earn their way on, guys that are working in corporate America, all of it. You know, so it's you know, there's a lot of stories, 21 stories. They're going to walk through that gate on Saturday for the last time. And And, you know, that's one of the things that I mentioned after the game is I'm hoping, I know we got some parking issues, and I don't want to get into that because trust me, I've gotten a lot of messages about it. I don't want to get into the parking thing, but I think these seniors deserve that stadium to be sold out and rock and to pay respect to them, and we're going to need it as well. You know, we're going to need it as well to go 1-0 and get another win this week.
Hey James, asking you a question you can answer this week.
Thank you. You typically do that.
Yeah, I do my best. Half this team wasn't here when Trace was, you would say, at his best, or was doing the sorts of things that Trace sort of built his legacy on. And so often when we think of when Saquon was around at the Minnesota game, you forget that Trace ran for whatever it was, 40 yards to set up the field goal to tie that game. You sometimes think people have, for all of the skilled guys that you've had and all of the flashy guys that you've had, have sometimes overlooked sort of the value that he's brought to the table over the 3 years that he's started.
I think early on, I think you got a combination of both. I think early on, you know, you have Mike Gesicki making these wild plays, and Deshaun Hamilton, and Saeed Blacknell, and Saquon Barkley, and so on and so forth. We've had a bunch of guys that, you know, did some spectacular things. So I think early on, he probably didn't get enough credit. But when you talk to other college coaches, when I see college coaches on the road recruiting, when I see college coaches at the convention, they would always say, you know, this guy's special, this guy does this well, this guy does, but it starts and ends with your quarterback. So I think, you know, people within the business that we talk to, I think get it. And then all those guys leave, and Trace, you know, for a good portion of the year, while those guys are trying to kind of get adjusted and kind of figure things out, he's carrying a lot of weight on his shoulders, probably too much weight on his shoulders. So yeah, I think early on he probably didn't get enough credit, and probably now, you know, he's probably getting too much criticism. It's kind of the life of the head coach and of the quarterback. So, but he's been just spectacular. He's been fantastic. As a kid, as a player, as a leader, his whole family, they've been phenomenal. So, you know, I think when it's all said and done, I know how that stadium will react for him on Saturday. I know how he'll look down in this program for years to come. I think his legacy is as strong as it gets, in my opinion. I'm biased, I get that, but I think it's as strong as it gets.
Hey James, I feel bad I'm the only one not asking questions about senior day. But I want to ask you about Antoine Brooks, because he seems, what have you seen from him on film? He seems like a very interesting sort of defender where he's a strong pass rusher despite not having those measurables that you might have from a guy on the outside. Yeah,
you know, he's problematic. I don't think there's any doubt about it. You know, I think you look at what he's been able to do, explosive, powerful. That's kind of how I look at these guys. Powerful, explosive, twitchy, and productive. And they play really, really hard. And that's the thing that really kind of showed up on film this past week. Play really, really hard. So I think that's one of the things you have to be careful as coaches, is not all these guys come in the same package. Not all of them look like Yetur Gross-Matos. You got Shaka, you got all these different body types, but you got guys that got a chance to be successful, playing to their strengths, and coaches taking advantage of their strengths.
Got time for 2 more?
Thanks. You guys are 1 day shy of the early signing period, being a month away. So how do you feel like you guys have balanced that now that you've gone through it for a year and kind of maybe have the rhythm of it down a little bit better since it was new last year?
Yeah, you know, I prefer to talk about Maryland right now, but yeah, I think last year there was a lot of unknowns about how that was going to go, and in our mind, there really was only going to be, for the most part, 1 signing day, which was the first signing day, and it pretty much played out that way. I think we'll have a similar situation this year. You know, I think we'll probably have a better idea after this year ends and be able to look at the last 2 years and kind of come up with some, you know, some philosophies about it. You know, but I think after 1 year, it's kind of difficult to say, you know, how it's going to go consistently. But I think we got a pretty good feel for it.
Anything else for Coach? All right, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.